I'm Karel Sovak. I'm an assistant professor at the University of Mary, and I have been there for 6 years. And I took a rather different career path than most people do when they get into higher education. I joined the Air Force right out of high school and came to North Dakota and actually spent 4 years in North Dakota in the Air Force. And I ended up getting out of the Air Force and going into sales. And I spent 20 years in sales, but I always had the idea that I would be in the classroom. I actually got my undergrad in history and political science with the hope of teaching law school. I didn't want to practice law, I just wanted to teach it. So I always had that inkling of being in that classroom. When I was in the insurance business, I actually did the pre-licensing classes, and that's where I got indoctrinated into the classroom. And I said, this is really something that I would like to do. And it was very fortunate that I was able to, after 20 years of sales, get into a situation where I could go back and get my master's degree. And once I did that, I just started adjuncting all kinds of classes. In fact, my first class was a communication or a speech class. And I really fell in love with it, and I knew higher ed was where I wanted to be, post-secondary level. And so I continued to take as many classes as I could, do some online classes, accelerated classes, and finally there was an opening at the University of Mary, and I got in. And you know, it's a wonderful position to be in because it allows you to have the freedom and flexibility to do a lot of other things that are business related. So we get involved with strategic plans and risk assessments and board governance for nonprofits and a number of different things. So the things that I do in the classroom, I'm able to actually continue on outside of the classroom as well. And I take my students with me. Being a part of Collegiate DECA is one of those concepts as well, which allows my students to apply what they're doing in a competitive environment. So I've been very fortunate to take that career path. I grew up in Akron, Ohio. It's a blue-collar city, and there was not a big demand for you to go on to higher education. It was more that you were expected to go work, and I didn't want to go through that path. I really saw my path as doing something. I guess I didn't want to do the labor end of it. I wanted to be in the white-collar end of it. But I also knew that I had some skills that I wanted to develop. The Air Force matured me. It allowed me to kind of put my sights on what I wanted to do with my life, and that's why teaching was always that call. But I knew it wasn't going to be at the elementary or middle school or high school level. I wanted it to be at that post-secondary level. And again, very fortunate that I had the means to be able to go out and get the degree, the master's degree that was necessary, and then landed a job in that field.
How many hours a week do you work?
Oh, there's a number of hours. I think people tend to think that if you're in higher education that you tend to put in your 3 or 4 classes a day and then you go home for the night. But as I said, I involve myself in a number of community activities, and so I'm constantly involving myself with nonprofits and for-profits and consulting jobs and getting my students involved in things. So if you were to look at my day starts, for example, this morning, 6:30 in the morning, I'll probably go until 7 or 8 tonight with various things, different meetings, whether it might be some papers that I'm grading, I have an online class. So it is one of those things that makes it difficult to try and balance work and life, but I really take a look at it and say it's not a lot of work, it's things that I like to do. There's some mundane things that go along with any job, and that's meetings and all of those things, but it is one of those things that it's a time-consuming job, but it's consuming the time in doing things that I like to do that I'm passionate about.
So that kind of answers the next question, but do you take work home with you?
I absolutely take work home with me. I don't know how I couldn't. I sometimes go where I don't check my email and all of a sudden there's 30 or 40. So I'm constantly checking my email. I'm constantly looking for those things that I can take into the classroom, and I'm also reaching out to individuals saying, hey, we have students that you might be able to make use of. What are your needs? So yeah, I absolutely take work home quite a bit.
Describe a typical work week.
You know, in addition to my classes, like I said, I start about 6:30 in the morning and prep for my classes. I have generally 3 or 4 classes a day. It depends on what my schedule is. There's always meetings that are scheduled in there. And so, you know, Mondays, Tuesdays are generally a lot busier days. Thursdays and Fridays are busier days. And I've purposely kept my Wednesdays open. Those are the days that I use for board meetings, to meet with individuals in the community. So my Wednesday, for example, I have one class, and so I'm able to do things in the morning. I'm able to go back to the school, get my class taken care of, and then spend the rest of the time, either prepping for my Thursday and Friday activities that I need to do. But my week is generally something different every week, and that's what I love about it, is that I get up every morning and saying, okay, what am I going to take on today? And it's probably entirely different than what I took on 2 days ago. And that's really what keeps it refreshing and keeps me engaged. I never wake up saying, oh, God, I got to go to work. It's one of the things that I can really truly say. I put my feet on the floor and say, what am I going to tackle? And then hope that I set out and tackle that.
How has your education prepared you for your career?
Like I said, I took a different career path to academia. Most people go to school and they have that educational background and they get their master's and work on their PhD. I'm just working on my PhD, and you can tell by the gray hairs that I'm not your normal right out of high school or college with your master's. It was 20 years between the time that I got my undergrad degree and my master's degree, for example. So I have 20 years of industry experience that I bring into the classroom. And so a lot of my educational background, history prepares me to take a look at how things were. And my political science background also gave me the political, legal type of things that you can take a look at in business. And then getting a master's in management also was one of those things that helped prepare me for better understanding the way that business works, but then being out there and experiencing certain things, I could bring that into the classroom and I could say, well, okay, this is what the textbook says, but here's what's really going to happen. And I can give them that real world experience. And I think that that's one of the things that we've been striving to do in education is not say when you get out into the real world, but bring the real world to the individual, or take the students out into the real world and put them into a situation where they can apply certain things. So my education is very valuable. I am a voracious reader on a number of different topics, so I try to keep involved with a number of things, even outside of business, because there's so many things outside of business that can help you in business. And then the other thing that I try to do is a lot of spiritual work, internalization I call it, to help me continue to model those values and things that I like to say is very important in the business world. And so I work on my inner self, and I also have my students reflect on their inner self and help them better understand who they're going to manage in the future, which is themselves.
What goals do you have for yourself in your career?
My number one priority is finishing up my doctorate. I've been involved in that for probably 4 years, and I'm in my dissertation stage, and it's a taxing thing. It would be nice to be able to just take time to do that, but it's trying to balance everything, the schoolwork that I have to do, family work that I want to do, and then the doctoral program that I really need to finish. That would be my major goal. From that, though, I really love inspirational or motivational speaking. I am very fortunate to be able to do that. I'm at a university that is private Catholic Benedictine, and I'm able to take the servant leadership values that we have there and go out into the community and farther out into the community, across country, and meet different people and different students and express the servant leadership message, the Benedictine values, and why they're important in the business world as well as your life. Personal life.
You kind of answered this, but do you travel, and how often do you travel for your job?
Oh, I travel a lot, not necessarily for my job. I think if it was just strictly education, I probably wouldn't go as much, but I'm so involved in many different things. I'm on the workforce safety, workers' comp board, so I'm able to travel with them. I'm on Collegiate DECA, and we travel every year somewhere different with ICDC. It's in Anaheim. This year it's in Orlando. I'm on the post-secondary council for them, so I just traveled to Virginia for the last 3 days, and we put together some things for the collegiate events that we're going to be hosting this next year. So yeah, I get to travel a lot, and then my own personal types of things. My wife also works in a job where she's required to travel, so I have that luxury of having my summers off to be able to go with her. So they're currently working in Seattle and Boise, and those are places that I've been able to travel with her. So yeah, I travel a lot. I wouldn't necessarily say it's for work, though, but it's all the extracurriculars that I'm involved in that allows me to do that.